Welcome to Leadership Reimagined. I'm your host, Cassie Crosby. Today, I'm excited to welcome my friend and colleague, Candice Ramsey. Her work gets at one of the hardest parts of leadership that I hear from clients frequently, the feeling that you're constantly performing and that the person you have to be at work is different than the person you are at home. Candice helps leaders do the courageous work of stepping out of the hustle to lead in a way that feels most aligned with who they really are. This conversation is for every leader who's tired of the grind and ready to discover what's possible when they stop performing and live their purpose. Welcome, Candice. I'm so excited for the conversation.
Hi, Cassie. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. I've been really excited for this conversation. So to get started, why don't you share a little bit with us about how you got here and why you do the work you do today?
Hi, everyone. I'm Candice Ramsey. I'm the founder of Mahogany Coaching and Consulting, and I help founders stop being the bottlenecks in their own businesses and lead with clarity, unlock their next level of revenue, and basically guarantee their longevity in their role. It's very important. And how I got here, Cassie, it's such a journey of how I got here. I would have never thought that I would be doing the type of work that I'm doing today. So, just to give you a little bit of background and context, I'm an Army veteran. I joined the military directly out of high school. I was one of those youth that really didn't have complete clarity on what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this is probably going to be a theme as I tell you a little bit about my journey. There's this lack of clarity. But all I knew was that at that moment, after 12 years of school, I didn't want to go back to more schooling. And so
Mm-hmm.
I just said, I don't want to do college right now. Whether I take a year off or, longer, I'm burned out. I just don't want to go back to school. So I joined the military. The military was great for me. And I was speaking to somebody not too long ago. I think it was another podcast that I was on. And I told the host then, every piece of my journey contributed to where I am today. So I learned just this sense of worldliness. And I had this thirst for people when I was in the military, and I was meeting people from all over the globe, all different backgrounds, all different contexts, which kind of leads me into the space that I'm in today. When I got out of the military, I started working for the government, which is kind of a natural transition. You go from being a service member into a GS role. But I was essentially doing the same type of work that I was doing in the military. And it wasn't bringing me the sense of joy that I wanted to feel in my work. That was a missing piece throughout my career trajectory, is like that sense of joy. And so I transitioned into consulting, and I was consulting for one of the big four accountant firms. And again, it was a seamless transition, basically doing the budget and the finance in the GS role. I transitioned into doing budget and finance in the consulting role. But again, it didn't scratch that itch of my thirst and my love for people. And so I transitioned, still in that same big four accounting firm, into a role that was in the people space.
Mm-hmm.
And then that itch started to get scratched a little bit, and I started to feel a little bit of lighting up because I was in that role of serving people. It wasn't necessarily serving the people the way that I wanted to. And so to scratch that itch, I went down a different path. I went back to school. Now, by this time, I'm over the age of 40. So, I'm an older student. I've always had this like real passion about human nature and human behavior. So I went back to school for psychology, and I became a licensed therapist. And I started doing that kind of on the side of my consulting job. And it was scratching that itch, serving that little passion that I have for people, but I was still able to work in a career that provided for my family and just allowed me to live the sustainable life that I wanted to live. But I still really, really felt like I did not have that sense of joy that we seem to always chase. We're always like, I don't feel that joy yet. Like there's still
Mm-hmm.
something missing. Um, and so I did this for a while, and I transitioned into a couple of different consulting roles until I landed in my last corporate role, which was an internal consultant for a major tech company. And in that role, I was doing all of the things. I made a salary that most people dream of. I was working on projects that, most people would be like, that's really innovative. It's
Yeah.
great work. Like, how are you
Yeah.
still missing something? I was meeting some of the smartest people in the world in this company that I was working for, yet something was still missing. And that's when I started to find my way into entrepreneurship. I knew a long time ago that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't know what I wanted to do or how I wanted to serve. I had gotten certified as a coach many years ago, but I wasn't really doing it actively. It was more of a passive hobby. And then I realized the power of understanding on a deep level who you are, what motivates you, what drives you, and what
Yeah.
brings you that sense of joy that I talked about that was missing throughout my entire career. I realized that that was the thing that was missing for me, was that I didn't dig deep into who I was and what actually brought me that sense of. I
Mm.
was looking for these roles to bring me joy instead of finding it within myself and going out and seeking that thing. And once I discovered that and how magical that was for me, I wanted to bring that to other people because
Mm.
I realized that you serve the best when you realize what it is that you need to give you that kind of internal drive and that internal passion.
Yeah, we're going to come back to that point. And so you have all this unique experience from the army to therapy to working for big corporate. I'm curious how your experience has sort of shaped the way that you coach leaders or how you yourself lead.
Yeah, I think all of those experiences really shaped the way that I coach because they all gave me a different perspective. I spoke about this just a moment ago. When I joined the military, it gave me this kind of worldly way of looking at people and leaders and just kind of how we navigate the world. And so I have this deep understanding of we're all very different. We all have a different melting pot of backgrounds and contexts and communication styles and relationship
Yeah.
building styles and all of these things. Navigating through the military and corporate and learning the different tools and techniques that I learned being a therapist, all of these things drives the way that I coach people and seeing people as the unique entity that they are. That's the reason why I named my company Mahogany,
Yeah.
right? Mahogany
Yeah.
trees are rare, they're beautiful, they're unique. And each and every one of my clients that I coach, they fit into that same mold of a beautiful mahogany tree. And that's how I approach coaching.
I've heard you talk a lot about this exhaustive cycle of performance, and I'm curious, what does that look like when that shows up for people? And then, what's the cost of finding yourself in this cycle?
Oh, man. Yeah, you have all of these different hats, right?
Mm.
You have this table full of hats. And every time you're in a different situation and you're like trying to put on a different hat to, shape shift or code
Yeah.
switch or, whatever name we want to assign to it. And it's really, really, really exhausting, right? It's
Yeah.
hard to maintain all of these different personas, all of these different identities because we want our corporate partners to see us in a certain way. We want our corporate clients to see us in a certain way. We want our coaching clients to see us in a certain kind of way. And then we want our family to see us in a different kind of way. Right.
Yeah.
And it's like something has to give. Right.
Yeah.
Um, what's funny is actually just this morning, how coincidental actually. Just this morning, I was listening to the radio when I was driving to go get my coffee, and I heard Steve Harvey say something along the lines of, I don't leave somewhere to teach somebody else a lesson. I leave somewhere to teach myself a lesson.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
trying to wear all of these different hats and trying to be performative and show up in a different way every time we're in a different situation. It just really, really, there comes a point where we just lose ourselves completely and we
Hmm.
don't know who we are, what we want, how we lead. We don't know any of those things. And then we
Hmm.
hit a point where we have to crash. I think it's always great to have a coach, for
Yeah.
performance and take us to the next level, but we shouldn't hit a point to where we're crashing and burning and losing ourselves.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I know. And I think too, so often when I talk to people and we, dig deep on this and realize that people are feeling like they have to be someone different at work or they have to put on those hats, it's actually not other people's expectations that they're living in. It's their own.
It's our
It's
own.
their own projection of what they think other people expect.
Correct.
And it's just this exhausting like cycle and hamster wheel that just keeps you spinning trying to prove yourself to everyone else when really,
You're just trying to prove yourself to yourself.
right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
You hit
we've
the
all
nail on the
been
head.
there, right? We have all been, I
We've
mean,
all been there.
I know you have, I know I have. It's like you just get so deep inside your head.
Yeah, yeah. It's the expectations that we put on ourselves, right? A lot of times these discussions don't really come from the people that's around us. They don't say, I expect you to be this way. Sometimes, it does come out in different situations in our lives, but usually it's like, I'm the one that's going into my job and saying, I have to be perfect. Because
Hmm.
if I'm not
Yeah.
perfect, then this is how they're going to view me. And so that
Right.
perfectionism came from me thinking that if I'm
Right.
not perfect, then my boss is going to see me a certain kind of way, or my customers, my clients are going to see me a certain kind of way. Nobody has told me, Candice, you have to be perfect or else I'm out.
Right.
So yeah, you hit the
Yeah.
nail.
And your boss is probably doing the same thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so much of your work is focused on really helping people be authentic. But I'm curious for you personally, professionally, what does that even mean to be authentic?
Yeah. My work is very deeply rooted in identity. I use a lot of emotional intelligence in my work. And authenticity really is about leveraging and leaning into your personal strengths. And then understanding also, because on the other side of our strengths are our weaknesses, right? And just understanding where our blind spots might be and learning how to also navigate the areas where we might not be so strong, or the areas where we might have gaps and blind spots and that. When I talk to people about showing up authentically, it's about not casting a shadow over the things that you might consider weaknesses, because some of those things your team members might consider strengths,
Yeah.
right? I know, being a woman leader, that people have actually said to me that showing vulnerability in the workforce is a weakness,
Mm-hmm.
and that
Yeah.
you have to have more of these, what they consider male traits, to be respected, especially if you're in a male
Yeah.
dominated environment.
That's that
Right?
mold, right?
Yeah. And so it's like, no, vulnerability is not a weakness. And I have some team members who have proven to me that showing
Yeah.
vulnerability is actually a strength, because it encourages them to step out and be stronger and do things that maybe they wouldn't necessarily do. And so
Yeah.
when I think about being authentic, it really is just about leaning into the traits that make you uniquely and beautifully who you are. Because to you, whether you try to mask or hide or shadow, people see
Yeah.
you for who you really are. I mean, let me ask you, have you ever had one of those leaders where they try to be a certain kind of way, or they try to put on a certain mask, and you can see right through that?
Oh, yes.
And you're like, I know
Yep.
exactly who you are behind that
Yeah.
mask. And
You
so
wait till they
showing
get
more of yourself.
stressed or overtired, hungry.
Definitely,
Yep.
definitely. And just showing more of yourself is what authenticity is all about.
Yeah, that's great. This exhaustive cycle of performance, what does that look like? And then what's the cost? Like when people come to you, what's the cost they're paying for this cycle?
What typically happens is, it goes from, I have to be performative all the time. I have
Mhm.
to, show people the sides of myself that they want to see. Then it turns into stress, right? Because
Yeah.
then you're trying to navigate all of these. You go from one meeting to another, right? You're running from, maybe a client meeting to go and pick your kids up, and then you got to
Yeah.
smile in the face of the PTA, and all of these things.
Hmm.
So then it turns into this level of stress, and if you don't release that stress that you're carrying and you're accumulating, then eventually it's going to take you down a path of burnout. And I already talked about, losing yourself, and, losing a sense of your identity and the things that really are meaningful to you, and the things that bring you joy and bring you life, because you're essentially living for other people.
Right.
And nobody really wants to do that all the time. We can take care of other people, and we can show up and work hard at work without losing our sense of identity.
Yeah, and I think there's a difference between like being selfless in your leadership and being authentic, and I don't think that in order to be authentic, you have to take from others,
Correct.
and I think so often we put the needs of others before our own, no matter how that person is showing up or what they're doing.
Mhm.
right? And that stuff really eats away at you. It eats at your soul, it eats at
It
your
really does.
tolerance, you know?
You
Yeah,
know, I had a leader that I absolutely respect because, when you talk about this distinction between selflessness and authenticity,
yeah,
she was a very authentic leader, right? And she showed up for work, she took care of the team, she did all of the work that she needed to do at work, but she also had a very challenging family situation.
yeah,
What that did was her authenticity and her vulnerability and her, just being not just an employee of the company, but also being a mom and being a
mhm,
family member. It allowed us to have a level of empathy for her as a leader. And it also allowed us to be able to step in and take the lead when we knew that she needed to take a step
mhm.
back.
Yeah,
Right. And so I think
yeah,
her showing that level of authenticity allowed not only her to take care of herself and take care of us, but it allowed us to take care of ourselves and for us to take
yeah,
care of her. And so it was like just melting pot of, you know, leaders stepping in, a leader stepping out. So I'm telling you, just being authentic and being true
yeah,
to who you are and kind of what's going on in your life, it allows your team to grow in ways that you probably don't even think. You think you might be a burden on them, but it
right.
actually turns into a model of growth for them.
Yeah, it can be kind of empowering,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, I think there's something too and I experienced this some in my career being a woman and the military and often feeling like you had to fit a certain mold is there's this wall that goes up. And then when you think you have to be perfect, other people think they have to be perfect, and it impacts your approachability, your relatability. How have you experienced that?
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that 100%. I've seen people who put on this persona of
Hmm.
perfectionism, and it
Yeah,
almost stifles my ability to lean into
yeah,
things that make me real and true, because I almost feel like I have to be just as perfect as this person, otherwise they're going to judge
yeah,
me. And
yeah.
so I think that going back to showing up truly as who you are, it empowers others
Yeah.
to truly show up as who they are. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm ready to, find myself. I'm ready to do this work, find my way back to alignment. What does that process look like in your work?
So the way that it first starts with me, after we have an initial conversation, because I like to make sure that everybody has a conversation with me to make sure that there's alignment there. So most of my things will not be a click a button on the website in
Yeah.
person. I like to meet everybody.
Yeah.
First thing that we start off with is an intake. I have my framework. It's the 3 dimensions of self leadership. There's 6 pillars, so 2 under each dimension. And then it also asks some questions, because I have a couple of different assessments that I use in my work. I use emotional intelligence. I use this stress assessment. I also use the Enneagram. So there's a couple of different frameworks that I use in my work. And what I do is my intake form is basically an assessment of its own to let me know which of these areas you struggle with the most. And
Mm,
so whether it is emotional resilience for stress, I'll know that after they take this intake form. And then once we do that, then we know what pain point is strongest for you, and we'll know how to get you back to you.
yeah. So kind of getting to the root of it.
Yeah.
What's really at stake here?
What's really going on for you?
Yeah. Okay.
Because a lot of times you don't know what you don't know, right? And so all you know is that something just doesn't feel right. For me, early on, it was that nagging sense of I'm missing something. And I didn't
Hmm.
know that it was tied to my identity, my preferences, my strengths. I had no idea back then. All I knew was that something was missing. And so typically a client might come to me because something is missing. They're
Yeah.
no longer fulfilled at work. They no longer feel like they have the capacity to lead in the way that they used to lead. Something is going on, and they come to me because of that something that's going on. And then my role is to help diagnose that and then to coach you to the other side.
And then what do you find is the biggest obstacle that people face in this work?
The biggest obstacle that people face, I would have to say getting raw.
Mm,
I would say that that's the biggest obstacle, because if somebody comes to me who is so conditioned to be performative,
Yeah.
then early on, it bleeds into the coaching. Right? Early on, it will bleed into the coaching and they'll come with this kind of performative nature. One of the things that therapy taught me is how to see beyond that
Yeah.
performative nature, right? And how to actually see the person behind that. But I think that that's probably the biggest obstacle early on. And then once they realize that they have to put these walls down, they have to take this mask off, and they have to see themselves for who they really are, we can kind of get over that hump. But that's probably the biggest obstacle. And then also, I think another obstacle, it's not just in my work, I think it's just in executive coaching in general, is will this work for me? I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people actually feel like, I've tried a lot of different, professional and personal development things before, and here I am. I'm
Yeah.
sitting in front of you now. So will it work for me? So those are the two biggest obstacles.
Yeah. Well, and that's some real deep work, right?
Mhm.
That we're doing with people too, that you're doing. I do very similar work that just, it's a lot to ask of someone to come to you. And I'm always sort of, I don't know, in wonder, I guess, or amazed at just how quickly the work can get deep,
Oh yeah.
you know? It's like,
Oh yeah.
okay, we're
It
doing
can
this.
happen in a matter of like the second session, and you're like,
Yes.
wow, we got here
Yes.
fast.
Yeah, but sometimes people, if you come from a very high pressure environment, the first time I had coaching, you're showing up, you're closing windows, you're trying to shut off notifications, your brain is still in the work. It definitely can take some time to get settled and just get comfortable in the work.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to feel a little bit of a shift as well, right? And there's
Yeah.
also this desire that has to be present.
Hmm.
One of the things that I've learned is that the biggest growth comes in a space of discomfort. And
Hmm.
so, you got to make yourself a little bit uncomfortable in these coaching sessions for
Yeah.
growth to really happen and for you to go to the next
Yeah.
level.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And then how does this all connect to our well-being and how we show up for our team? Why does any of this matter?
Yeah, I think it is the biggest piece of us just living in a state of wellness. And so my signature approach is the mindful self-awareness approach. And what I do is I help leaders from three critical aspects of our lives: our mental, physical, and our spiritual. It really helps with getting out of a state of chronic stress, living with your shoulders up to your ears all the time, and literally just releasing.
Yeah.
And the more that you release that level of stress and all of the expectations and all of the things that just kind of stack on top of your shoulders, then you breathe more openly and you
Yeah.
show up more as yourself, and you're just not carrying
Mhm.
the weight of the world all over you, right? And so
Yeah.
you show up, but your teams notice. Trust me when I tell you, your teams notice. They see a difference, they see a shift when you release all of that stress and you can think with clarity, you can lead with clarity. um I'm telling you, everything that I do revolves back around to stress maintenance, stress resilience, and just getting over, getting out of this state of chronic stress so that you can lead better and live better. Yeah.
Yeah. Because there's just a better way to be.
There is
Like,
a better way to be. Yeah.
yeah.
All of the shape shifting and, the performative way of
Mhm.
showing up, all it's doing is stressing us out. Like, we got enough stressors in the world. Like, think about, all of the
Yeah.
other things that's going on in the world, economic wise, all of the things. There's enough things in the world that stress us. Why would we stress ourselves by trying to live and lead as somebody that we're not?
And then, so for someone on the brink of burnout, what's one small thing they can do to start reclaiming the sense of themselves?
Yeah. Well, I am a huge advocate about the power of breath.
Mm,
It is the one thing that we have with us all the time. When you don't have your journal, when you don't have, maybe your phone's not next to you, maybe you listen to common music sometimes. Like, all of those things require you to have something with you.
Yeah.
Thing that you carry with you everywhere you go is your breath. And so I would say, if you find yourself, you're on the brink of burnout, your brain is fried, um,
Mm.
you find yourself stalled and stagnant and you can't even move, take a moment and just breathe. Take a moment and breathe, right? For relaxation, you want to have a longer exhale. I know that a lot of breathing exercises that you might see on the internet and YouTube and all of those things, it'll have you breathe in deeply, hold your breath on the inhale, and then exhale. But that's more of an activating breath when you hold on the inhale. And so what you want to do is you want to breathe in, and then you want to breathe out slower than your inhale, and then hold on the exhale. And that's going to relax. It's going to bring your nervous system down, and it's going to bring you to a state of calm. So that is a quick tip that anybody can use anywhere when you are frazzled and you need to regulate your nervous system. And
Yeah.
then there's lots of other tools that are out there that you can use as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I use that one when I'm going in to speak in public or feel my heart racing.
I'm a
Yeah.
huge advocate for breath work. I think we underestimate, even when I'm teaching meditation classes,
Yeah.
we tell people to focus on their breath. It's like we breathe so naturally that we don't
Mhm.
even think about our breath. And so focusing on your breath and doing breath exercises is one way of bringing yourself back home to yourself. We undervalue it sometimes.
Yeah. When I first went to coach training, and I'd been in the military at that point, 23 years, and the first thing we did was some breathing. And I realized I don't know if I've been breathing my whole career. I don't know if I've ever, like have any knowledge of it. It's just this thing that happens. I'm still here, but and
And that's exactly the way that most people see it, right?
yep.
There's sometimes when I catch myself if I'm in a workout and I'm like, oh, I was holding my breath. you know?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
we don't even realize it sometimes. We take our breath for granted. And I think that that's one of the
Absolutely.
easiest ways to lower our stress levels.
Yeah, I love that. And then where can we find you where you're doing this great work and talking about all this stuff? Where can we find you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, of course, everybody can always find me on LinkedIn, Candice Ramsey on LinkedIn, and all of the social media platforms. So choose whichever social media you like. I am Mahogany CC on most platforms. And one platform that I'm really loving right now and I'm getting into, so, follow me on TikTok. And I'm putting a lot of good things out there. And, I'm talking a lot about meditation, authenticity, emotional intelligence. So feel free to follow me
Yeah,
on TikTok as well.
cool. Well, thank you. Well, this was a great conversation. Thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge and insights. I think it's going to be really helpful for everyone. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cassie. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.